Hello, everyone. Welcome to Good Film Hunting, a podcast about an average couple who are on the hunt for some good movies. In today's world, we are consuming more media than ever, perhaps more passively than ever. But we believe that by documenting and discussing the media we intake, how and what we intake will change for the better. It is important that we don't just become another consumer, but a participant, seeking to engage with the media we consume, so that we can see how our view of the world affects how we perceive it, and how it affects how we perceive the world. In this podcast, we are not only on the hunt for some good movies, but on the hunt for a good discussion. So, lean in, participate, and enjoy. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Good Film Hunting. I am James the Scot, as usual, and besides me is my wife,
Savannah the Scot.
Yes, we are the Scots, and we are here to talk about movies. We're here to talk about them and rate them. And today, we are going to be talking about... What are we talking about?
Elvis.
Elvis, yes. We're talking about Elvis. Yeah, we watched this, several weeks ago, but it was a pretty interesting movie. We thought, bringing it up and talking about it again. If you haven't listened before, our general structure for this episode is to, I'll start by listing out some facts for Savannah. Some she may know, some she may not know. I like to kind of see how she reacts to that. We'll talk about our general spoiler-free thoughts on the movie itself, our history with the movie, and then we will go into our rating system that we've created, where we have 4 categories. That is entertainment, the quality, production quality, the overall writing, and content. We'll rate that on a scale of 1 to 5. We'll come out with each of our individual overall rating, and then we'll just sum it up and whether we'd recommend it or not. So you ready to talk about Elvis, babe?
I am ready to talk about Elvis.
Awesome. Let's talk about Elvis. So Elvis was released in 2022. It was released by Warner Brothers. It was directed by someone I've never seen anything from before, Baz Luhrmann. He's an Australian director. And you'll be surprised to know that a good portion of the production cast was Australian.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Never would have thought.
I guess Baz Luhrmann has done a lot of romantic stuff previously, so if ever you want to look into that.
Very nice.
The lead stars were Austin Butler and Tom Hanks. We're very familiar with Tom Hanks.
We are.
Austin Butler, I haven't seen in anything before, I think. Have you?
No, I don't think so. He didn't seem very familiar to me.
Okay. So apparently this movie was announced in 2014, but it's set in the infamous production hell, where things just kind of stagnate and don't really go anywhere.
Would it be production hell or production purgatory? Since it's
They
between.
call it hell.
But
They call it hell, so I mean, maybe if you really thought
sounds
about
more
it.
like purgatory to me.
I mean, so Miles Teller was considered for the role. He was in Top Gun Maverick as Goose's son, Rooster. What else was he in we saw?
I'm not sure. I feel like we saw him in something else, but I don't remember what.
Yeah, but also, guess who was suggested for the role originally?
I have no idea. Tom Cruise.
Harry Styles.
Oh.
That would have
No, that would not have worked at all.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
I thought that was interesting.
I don't feel like he has the right complexion.
Okay. So yeah, this happened to start filming right before COVID, and then COVID kind of became a thing, and I guess Tom Hanks got pretty sick, so that put back production. Elvis was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, which you're not too familiar with those, but they're essentially just like the biggest of the big awards for movies, and people talk about whether they're legitimate or not, and because some people think they're very biased these days. But in the Academy Award, it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Sound, Best Production Design, Best Cinematography, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Best Costume Design, and Best Film Editing, and it did not win any of them.
Aw, how sad.
I know.
It must be very embarrassing to be nominated for all those awards and not win them.
Win at least one.
Did it win any awards?
Yeah, like other movie awards. Like I think Austin Butler won quite a few for his acting. I think that was so. Speaking of which, that was like the big standout in this movie for most people's reviews. A lot of people were not sure about the movie itself, but like Austin's performance was like the one standout, and I thought that was interesting. Mm-hmm. So this only had a budget of $85 million.
Only. So small.
Guess what its box office was?
I don't know. Was it higher or lower?
I can't tell you.
I don't know.
Got a guess? Just go with your gut.
So it was 85 million budget?
Yeah.
108 million.
288.7 million.
Oh, wow. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And of course it had a runtime of 159 minutes. So, Savannah, without getting into too many spoilers, what were your general thoughts / history of the movie? And I guess Elvis in general.
I feel like I first saw a trailer for this movie when we saw Dune in 2021?
I guess so, yeah. I guess that's what it would have been.
I don't remember.
Or it would have been Batman. No.
No.
Well, one of the two.
And I was intrigued because Elvis is an interesting historical character. He's not really historical, I guess.
Well, he is for America.
He's pretty iconic.
Yeah.
So I was intrigued because I feel like they've been making a lot of biopics lately.
Yeah.
Like Elvis, and then there's that Weird Al one that came out.
Yeah. Although that one was obviously a parody.
Yeah.
Although we haven't seen it, but people...
this one's much more of a life story. I thought it was very interesting. Mm-hmm. It definitely highlighted the fact that Elvis had a very hard life, and which we can go into more later. Mm-hmm. But I thought altogether it was enjoyable.
Yeah.
They made some interesting choices creatively, but I feel like altogether it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a couple weeks. I think that's what my thoughts were.
Yeah, I was skeptical of seeing this. Like, something about the trailers gave me weird vibes to the point where I kind of just put off really seeing it. But I know you mentioned wanting to see it a couple times, and I wasn't so opposed to seeing it. Like,
yeah, I feel like I wanted to see this movie more than you did.
You did. The only really history I have with Elvis is Lilo and Stitch, as we've established. Every time I hear one of Elvis's songs, I think of a scene from Lilo and Stitch. So, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I think just because I had no idea what I was getting into in terms of, like, I knew it was a biopic and it was going to be dramatic. And sometimes, because something's so different, it can take you aback and you don't enjoy it as much as you could. Maybe like the second time through because you're knowing what to expect. But I mean, I surprisingly enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. Like you said, like creatively, there were very interesting choices in terms of editing that just they took a while to adjust to.
Yeah.
And by the end, it kind of evened out a little bit more. But still, it was a wild ride as far as the editing goes. But yeah, so those were our overall thoughts. Now we're going to go into our spoiler-filled rating section where we talk about the individual categories and rate them personally. Once again, that's just our overall entertainment, the production quality, writing, and the content. So we'll go ahead and we'll start with entertainment. Savannah, giving us, all the spoilers in the world on a scale of 1 to 5. What would you give this for entertainment and why?
Well, I would say it was interesting. There was some very, like in the beginning, it basically starts off on we get introduced to Elvis in a very interesting way.
We don't even get to introduce to Elvis first. Who's the character? Colonel...
I don't remember.
Colonel Snow? Is that what they...
No. Yeah. Yeah, maybe? I don't know. I don't remember what he's called.
We'll have to look it up
Yeah.
because we're not going to go a whole thing guessing his name
again. I know. No, we were introduced to Elvis first, but like as far as the introduction, the movie is told through the lens of the Colonel, right?
Yeah.
So we're introduced to him first, but then we meet Elvis, and it's just very. It took me aback because I didn't really know what to expect, and so it was very, very interesting, very showy. I thought it was fun to watch for sure. It was fun to hear Elvis songs that I hadn't really heard. I mean, I think I was pretty familiar with most of them because they picked mostly, popular ones. But I thought it was fun. It was fun to watch. It kept me engaged. I don't remember being super bored. I would say I'd give it a 4.
Yeah.
Out of 5 for entertainment value.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, because it wasn't like the most exciting and entertaining movie I've ever seen in my life. But it was definitely quite enjoyable.
Okay.
And it kept me engaged.
To my surprise, I'd probably give it a 5 out of 5 as far as entertainment goes. As much as the editing choices like threw me off in the beginning and were so flashy and so showy in terms of how they bounced around and the colors and the different collages they showed, I think like it just got me so hooked right away that there never was a moment where I was bored. And they had me invested in the story of Elvis from, the very beginning. And the fact that they started with, you should look up the Colonel's name while we're sitting here so we don't,
Okay.
go on later. I think it's Colonel Snow because he kept referencing snowmen a lot and snowflakes.
No, because the snow was kind of like his way of, like that was like his word for like how he, deceived people.
Yeah.
But that could be right too. Colonel Tom Parker.
Colonel Tom Parker, okay. Yeah, the fact that it was not through Elvis's perspective, but through the Colonel's perspective, and the fact that right off the beginning we knew the Colonel wasn't who he justified himself to be, because people accused him of essentially killing Elvis because of his mistreatment of him. And this will go more into the writing aspect later, but like I just thought that was a very interesting take, and it definitely provided some like interesting questions about the Colonel's narrative versus like what we saw. Like everything, yeah, I was just very entertained and always wondered what was going to happen next. And I think because it wasn't necessarily completely linear and there was so much going back and forth and very lengthy musical numbers that were so crisscrossed in how they were edited and how they went back in time, I was actively engaging in trying to figure out where we were and how everything fit in, but not in like a bad way. Not in like the sense like, oh, I'm confused and not enjoying this because I'm confused, but like I felt that the pattern eventually became set enough to where I kind of understood what was happening and enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would give it a 5 out of 5 for entertainment.
Wow.
Yeah.
High praise.
That is high praise. So yeah, let's move on to production quality. What would you give it on a 1 to 5 in production quality?
I thought it was high in production quality. I felt like the colors were a little forced seeming.
Oh, really?
Like it almost seemed like there was a filter cast over the whole movie.
Oh, there was, for sure.
Which was okay. It kind of gave a distinct vibe. But when I think of the movie, that's like a lot of what I think about. I feel like it was a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
But it did drag one into the story, and it did make one feel a certain atmosphere, but I feel like that could have just been slightly lightened.
Okay.
I thought the casting was interesting. I did not love Tom Hanks in the role of Colonel Tom Parker. I thought I don't know, he just seemed awkward. And, like, his accent was very dodgy. Like, it felt like it kind of, I don't feel like it was convincing. I definitely feel like I did forget that it was Tom Hanks a couple times, which is good, but I just feel like the accent just threw me off. And, like, the vibe was just kind of odd to me. I thought the other roles were cast really well. What's his wife? Is his wife's name Priscilla?
I think so.
She was cast really well. I thought she looked like identical to his actual wife, which I thought was cool. And I thought the guy who played Elvis was a really good choice too. I also thought the acting was pretty good, and the story was pretty good. And I feel like it was fairly easy to follow once you got used to the way that it was being told.
Yeah.
There were some interesting, I feel like, camera. Not angles, but the camera moved in interesting ways throughout the movie, I feel like. But all in all, I thought it was good for production quality. I would say I'd give it a 5.
Okay.
That is me not knowing much about actual things like that. But, you know, I thought it was pretty good.
It was pretty good. Yeah, I think, like, I mean, yeah, I feel like the production quality of this movie, for the most part, is very, very good. Like, everything looks real, everything feels real. The colors, while they're definitely very vibrant, and there's obviously, you know, certain color grading that's done to make it look a certain way.
I think it's too saturated. I think
it's
that's
too
the word I'm
saturated?
thinking of.
Maybe. I think for what it was going for, they nailed it as far as the atmosphere and the ambience and everything working together to make the story they wanted. It was very good, and there was never, and that's not true. There were a few moments that made me cringe. I thought they were so bad.
Care to share what some of those were?
It was the Colonel's opening, the weird CG distortion casino effects they did sometimes they were coming back. They were really bad.
Yeah, I don't remember that very deep.
It took me out so much, and like seeing that right away, and that's how they opened it. It did scare me for half a second. Like, oh no, what are we getting ourselves into?
Okay, yeah, I kind of remember that now.
Where, you know, he introduces himself as being addicted, or he doesn't introduce himself that way, but like obviously he's
I
in
am
setting.
addicted to gambling.
It's just, yeah, that was really bad. And because that was so egregious, I would bump this to a 4 out of 5. But I mean, everything else was a 5 out of 5. Like, there's no complaints in the costume or the casting. Okay, so we have to talk about Tom Hanks. Or I have to talk about Tom Hanks because you already talked about Tom Hanks. I really liked him because he was so off-putting and just so fake. Like, his accent was very, very weird, but I liked it because just, I don't know, just everything about him was so fake, but like he was supposed to be fake because we find out he doesn't have any record of, or what do they call it?
He doesn't have any identity.
He doesn't have any identity
in America.
In America. And that's never really answered as to why that is, which can go more to writing. He's just such a weird person, such a weird character, and obviously has his motives of earning money, and I totally believe like he came from like a hillbilly type of world, but then he just kind of made his way through the carnival, and the fact that he tries to take on Elvis and takes advantage of that, like, it just, I thought it was really good and very off-putting, but I can see why some people wouldn't like it, but I thought it did very well, and I think that was probably, definitely the performance of Elvis was the best part, but yeah, I appreciated what Tom Hanks did. No, go on.
You tend to like weird old people.
Weird old people?
In movies, I feel like.
Oh, what would be some other examples?
I don't know, I just feel like you always take the part of the weird old person. Or just a weird
I need more
person.
examples to know what you're talking about.
I had to have to think about more examples, but I feel it in my heart. That's what you do. Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I just thought he was really good for what he did. Like, maybe it's just because he's a weird old person, but not Tom Hanks, but
I just look at, I picture him in my head, and I just picture like heavy foundation old man. Like,
really?
He has very heavy foundation, like makeup, I feel like.
I didn't feel that at all.
I don't know. Maybe I have a false idea of what he actually looked like. Maybe I need to look up a picture of him again.
Okay, no. He was creepy.
He was creepy.
He was so creepy.
Which is what I don't know.
I think another thing to talk about in terms of production and editing were how they did Elvis's performances. Because I always get really scared when they do have a musical performance in a movie. Because most of the time they're not done very well, in my opinion. And it becomes it almost breaks the reality of what you're watching. Like, you're watching a movie, but then you're watching, like, someone on stage singing, and it's like just one more dimension detached from what you're seeing.
That's why I don't love musicals. That's how I feel about musicals.
Okay, that's a conversation for another time. But, well, okay, here's the difference between musical and that. Musical, like, the story in and of itself, they're singing to progress the plot, and whereas, like, someone on stage, there's an audience watching it. Mm-hmm. But we're watching the audience as they're watching it, and it just becomes weird unless they do a very good job at putting you and sitting you in either one of the perspectives, either of the audience or the performer,
So, like,
I guess.
you're in the audience watching the performance, not, like, watching the audience watch the performance. Yeah.
Kind of.
Or you're, like, on stage with the performance.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But I thought they did it very well in this movie, and I think a lot of it had to do with them cutting back and forth so much between, like, different times in Elvis's life. And it just, everything was so vibrant and so fast-paced.
But they also loved their slow-mo in this movie.
They did too, which still made it so much faster. It was so weird. I thought that was very well done and me being skeptical of that kind of stuff. So I still would give it a 4 out of 5 just because those egregious scenes. So now we're going to move on to the writing. This is probably our favorite one to talk about.
It's true.
So what would you give it in writing and why?
I think that it was good.
Okay.
No. I think... No, I'm trying to think back. I can't remember... Were we introduced to child Elvis first, or were we introduced to, like, adult Elvis, and then we got, like, flashbacks to child Elvis? I don't remember.
We were introduced to adult Elvis first.
Okay.
Well, I won't explain unless you want me to.
No,
Like,
I mean, you can explain.
So we're introduced to him.
Jog my memory.
So we started with the Colonel, and we kind of got a little bit of his backstory as to what he was doing before he met Elvis. Then I think they heard Elvis over the radio for the first time. Everyone was talking about him.
Yeah, I remember.
And then they went and watched him, and we got flashbacks to Elvis's past to kind of put together the pieces of how he became who he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely thought that I can't say much for historical accuracy because I don't really know much about Elvis's life. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was quite well written. I thought it was interesting and engaging. I'm not one for non-linear storytelling. It's just not my thing. So I wasn't like, ooh, that's a cool choice. I just was, kind of annoyed that it was being non-linear, but it didn't distract from the story. It was interesting to see his roots. I thought the biggest standout was his roots in the gospel community.
Yeah.
And just how that started him initially being interested in how he surrounded himself mostly with African American people and just like the influences that had in his music. I am not familiar with African American music of that time period, but I'd be curious to listen to some and see how similar his music is to theirs. Not just gospel, but also just, the average music. I thought his character was I thought the writing was quite good.
Yeah.
I'd probably give it a 5.
Okay.
4.5.
4.5? 5?
Probably. I'll give it a 5.
Okay.
The writers did a really good job kind of conveying Elvis's life story in a way that I think was very... it definitely made me feel some things.
Yeah.
A lot, especially as time went on and he started having his struggles. Like him and his wife's relationship was very sad and heartbreaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just really sad to see an enthusiastic young man who loved music kind of like devolve into this sad shell of a person who had addiction problems and couldn't keep a solid relationship and couldn't have an actual relationship with his child. Like, that was just really sad.
Yeah.
And really heartbreaking. And I thought they did a good job of conveying that. So yeah, I would give it a 5.
Okay. What did you think about, would you say the end, you were, I guess when the ending kind of came around and the Colonel said what he said about Elvis not dying because of, too much of substance abuse or because of being overworked, but because he loved the music or he loved the audience, or and the colonel made it sound like, we watching were the reason he died, but he wasn't like blaming us so much as like he was willing to die. He was willing to work himself this hard because he loved you guys so much. What did you think about that? And like, do you feel like it added up, or do you feel like there was some disconnect there?
I definitely felt like there was some disconnect. I felt like Elvis I don't feel like he loved performing so much as he loved the music itself, and performing was just a way for the music to be shared. I never got the vibe that, as we might discuss later in content, Elvis seems a little obsessed with the attention from his crowd, as anyone would be in that situation. But I never got the vibe that he was like, I have to keep working for the people that I love so they hear my music. It was more like, I have to keep making music that I love. And I don't think he cared if it was on stage or if it was, in like a little honky-tonk somewhere. But I think his main motivator was probably his family. I think his motivator was the fact that he was getting tons of money that he was able to give to people in his life. So it's possibly he could have been doing it for the people, but not for us. It was for his family.
And that fell apart, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think the Colonel was trying to lead us astray.
He was.
He was trying to blame us for something that was his fault.
I know.
Rude.
That's what I thought about the ending was very thought-provoking and interesting, because the Colonel's giving us a certain narrative, which I don't necessarily doubt it's true, but like the story we were told wasn't necessarily focusing on that. And so like we're being told certain information, but what we feel and see isn't necessarily the same way. So I just thought that made for an interesting conversation, because Elvis never really talked about doing the music for the people so much as pursuing fame, as you mentioned, to help benefit his family, or what he thought would. And as it turned out, that ended up just hurting his family a lot.
He didn't even talk about his mom.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. It definitely, I don't know if this would be a tragedy. I guess it would be a tragedy, but like they tried to give it a bit of a happier ending, but there's no other way to describe it than a tragedy.
It's true. Elvis's life, along with the lives of many other famous people, tends to be very tragic.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the nature of this lifestyle. Not that happens to everybody.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that you live a certain lifestyle and your life is inevitably going to end in tragedy.
Yeah.
Which is really sad. Especially when they have such bright hopes and happy beginnings.
And they're so good at what they do too. Like, it's just sad that those kind of people tend to be the ones that go early. Writing. I go in between 4 and 5.
You should do 5 so you're like me, twinsies.
Should I? Well, I'll talk about it and we'll see. I thought the main focus of the story was on the Colonel and Elvis and their dynamic, and I felt like where the story lacked in terms of the writing was the building up of other relationships. I felt like I was sad about Elvis, or Elvis's wife leaving him, not so much for the sake of his wife, but because it made Elvis sad. Like, I didn't feel bad. Like, I didn't feel the things I want to feel from the wife's perspective, I guess.
I feel like we didn't really get to know her at all.
Yeah, she was just kind of more of someone who was there, an important figure. But, like, we just didn't have time to get to know her because we were so wrapped up in this other part of the story. I felt like he and his mom's relationship was interesting. I wasn't as invested in it as I want to be. They didn't really make me care about the mom.
She got on my nerves.
She was kind of annoying. She was a little
overbearing.
Yeah, and a little, would you say codependent on Elvis?
I think so.
Yeah. And I felt bad when she died because she overdrank, because Elvis was, I think, he was in the army at that point, and I think she was just so sad he was gone that she kind of just...
And probably worried about him, too. Yeah.
Like, I didn't feel bad for her so much as I felt bad that Elvis felt so bad about it. So yeah, I think that's the biggest criticism I have. I think some of the comeback for Elvis, when Elvis was trying to come back, specifically he went away to the army, he came back, he's more of an actor and a celebrity rather than a musician at that point.
Yeah.
I think his comeback from that to being a musician was kind of weird and somewhat cheesy, and I just felt like it wasn't as good as it could have been.
What? I can't remember. Remind me. How did he come back from that?
I can't remember that guy's names, but he went to a couple people who were good at, I guess, kind of revitalizing and taking certain approaches to getting people popular. I can't remember their names.
It wasn't the place where he did the Christmas special, was it?
It was.
Oh, okay.
That was heavily involved in that.
Okay.
So some of that was just kind of, I didn't like that too much. But yeah, I mean, if we're just focusing on the Colonel and Elvis, I thought it was very well done. And once again, we did see the rise and fall of Elvis, and they did that very well. And you cared about the rest of the story because you were invested in Elvis. And the Colonel was just such a fiend. Such a terrible person from the beginning.
He was a shyster.
The fact that he used Elvis, and going back to like the whole revival part from I guess just being an actor to a musician again, the fact that the Colonel was so fixated on what he called the Christmas special was really weird and eerie. And I felt like that worked so well. And there were just so many moments where you saw the Colonel go from genuinely caring, he cared so much about this one thing because he thought it was going to get the most business. But as soon as he realized, like, this other path Elvis was taking was going to work, like, he did a total 180 flip. And like, oh, like, this is the thing to do. Mm-hmm. And the twist at the end of Elvis and his family being in debt to the Colonel, when Elvis decides he's going to go on world tour after the Colonel essentially just kind of lulled him into staying at the hotel for however many years.
Yeah.
Like that whole twist of like, you are in debt to me and you can't really do anything. Like it's just such a twist that like we should have seen coming. And just that moment for me was very powerful. Like the fact that when Elvis goes to leave and, the Colonel's just sitting there very contentedly in his creepy way. And it's like, oh man, that hurts.
I know, how rude to like make someone do so much work and like practically kill themselves, take all their money, and then still have them in debt to you. Like, I'm just curious how Elvis like didn't get any money. Did he just spend it?
He just spent it all.
Copiously?
Yeah.
Wow, that's really sad.
Yeah.
That is a good lesson to all of us.
That's true. He came from, I guess, some poverty, and I guess naturally when you go from one side of the pendulum to the other, You don't really know what to do. So yeah, writing, I feel like, ooh, would I give it a 5? Would I give it a 5?
Maybe you should give it a 4.5.
4.5? I'm against doing points. I guess I'm going to go with a 5. I'm going to go with a 5. All right.
Wow.
All right.
I convinced
Maybe
you.
I'll change my mind later. It was pretty good. Yeah. And I think they knew what the story they were trying to tell, and they did it well. Okay. So we're going to go into our last section in our rating, the content, where we talk about the more negative content, which could include anything from crassness, language, violence, sexuality, and what we feel was not necessary, but what we feel is okay, but what they should have been allowed to get away with in comparison to the story they were telling, how much of it was unnecessary, etc. So, Savannah, what was your take on that? This one will be a fun. This will be a fun one.
It'll be a fun one. Well, everything's fine and dandy until the opening introduction to Elvis, or as he's fondly called, Elvis the Pelvis.
Oh yeah.
That was not supposed to be like a happy sound. That was like, It's a little bit disconcerting to maybe people who are not used to seeing such things, like me. I was a little taken aback. It was probably very similar to what he was actually like, though, so they stayed true to his actual dancing. Very odd. Very of its time, I guess, because I don't think that's a very common way of...
You just haven't seen performers.
Maybe, I guess. Well, I mean, Luke Bryan does things like that, too, the country artist. But anyway, very interesting. Some people might object to the way that the females in the crowd were reacting to his gyrations. As someone in the movie says, his lewd
I will
gyrations.
not allow him to perform any of my songs if he continues to do those lewd gyrations.
Yes.
Or something like that. I don't know if that
He
was the exact
refused to
quote.
perform with Elvis because of Elvis's lewd gyrations. They were indeed fairly lewd gyrations. They were not super suggestive, but anyone doing that with their hips is definitely going to be somewhat suggestive.
Yeah.
I feel like I got a little too wrapped up in that just because I was like, wow, okay. It was a little distracting, maybe.
Was it?
Because I just thought about it too hard. I probably shouldn't have. But, yeah. So that happened multiple times throughout the movie. Again,
Well,
I don't...
primarily towards the first half, right?
Yeah,
Before the drama happened.
Yeah, before the drama. Before he got, like, literally threatened with jail if he continued acting that way.
Mm-hmm.
But that was an interesting twist because not only were they afraid of it being scandalous, they were also afraid of it being, like... He was, like, introducing, like, African culture almost to the stage.
Yeah.
Like, they were accusing him of trying to be black, basically, and, like, dance like they would.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. We saw a little glimpse of that scene. But as far as that goes, it wasn't really... I mean, I'm being a little dramatic and silly. It wasn't really that bad. It wasn't that off-putting. It was very appropriate for him as a character, I feel like. The hype around it made it seem worse than it was.
Oh, yeah.
I think, in the movie. Lots of silly girls.
Oh, yeah.
Screaming.
That is, I don't know. That was something.
It was. I would do a brief and minor warning for people of a more sensitive nature, of a more prudish nature watching that first scene. But the rest are fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah. As far as language goes... Was there anything? I don't remember.
I mean, there was definitely one F-bomb. There was a couple of it. There was lewd gyrations. That doesn't really count. Yeah, there was some scattered here and there.
Yeah, it didn't stand out too much to me. As far as sexuality goes, I don't remember a lot.
There were a couple scenes. They weren't too revealing of anything. It just was more of like the hinting of like the before and after like Elvis's first experience with that, and then like later on in his career.
Oh yeah, that one scene when he was young in the hotel, and that girl. Mm-hmm. That was a little awkward. Not awkward, but like uncomfy.
Yeah.
But I would say this is probably a true PG-13 movie as far as the content goes. I wouldn't really want children to watch it.
No.
But I would definitely not say, like, I would say probably 16-year-olds and up would maybe appreciate it, like our 16-year-old brothers. Mm-hmm. Maybe.
Yeah.
So I would say for content, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. Mm-hmm. Not the worst, not the best.
Yeah.
Definitely watch with discretion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as far as the content goes, like, I thought everything it showed was important to an extent to the story. Like, it actually happened, obviously. Like, the whole Elvis pelvis thing was a very important and integral part to the story because it created so much drama. And I don't think, like, Elvis was, at least in the movie, they didn't like portray him as trying to be suggestive with it so much as just something he did, and it was the women, the audience members reacting to it that made it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The language wasn't like, there wasn't a ton of it. Like I said, there was one F-bomb, but like it was very obvious. Like I felt like it was quote unquote deserved in the moment. Because of how it was used. And then there was those 2 scenes. There's obviously some substance use.
Yeah, I was going to say that. There's definitely some decent substance abuse throughout the movie.
Yeah. So yeah, I would give it a 3 too. There were some things maybe they didn't need to show as much as they did. But like, I mean, I didn't feel like anything was out of place. Like, it wasn't like so much of a shock, like, oh, I can't believe they did that, or that wasn't necessary. Mm-hmm. But like everything,
cover your eyes.
Yeah, everything was there because it had some part to play, and I think it all added up in the end. But yeah, it's not. Like you said, it's a true PG-13 movie for, I'd say, older teens. But yeah, I think 3 is about where I'd land. Maybe in between 3 and 4, but I'll probably just stick with a 3. Alrighty, well, let's add it all up. That, for you, Savannah, leaves a
4,
4,
5,
3.
So 17. So I would say this movie probably, I would say a personal rating, probably a 4.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I gave it a 5, 4, 5, 3. I still go back and forth on the rating, but I'm not going to
No, that's the same as me, 17.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think we both come out to about a 4.
Yeah.
On this. It was good. It was very good quality. We enjoyed it. There was something to take away from it. There's conversation that can be had. Nothing... Yeah, I would watch it again if the opportunity came up. And, yeah, if like in a few years from now and don't know what to watch, like, hey, you can watch Elvis again.
Yeah, let's watch the Elvis movie.
So yeah, I'd say 4 sounds about right. Yeah, would we recommend it?
I think so. I would recommend it. Not in the way of being like, this is an amazing movie, you should watch it, but more like, this is an interesting movie, you should watch it. Mm-hmm. This is a thought-provoking movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say I'd fall, like, not because it's...
particularly meaningful.
Yeah. It's an interesting observation of human nature, and it is done well. So that is something to be said for it. Mm-hmm. Would you let kids watch it? I think we already discussed this.
Yeah, probably not. I would say older teens.
Okay.
Just because there's nothing a kid would really get from it.
Yeah.
And it's just a little sketch in some areas.
It's true, yeah.
Should children even be listening to rock music? That's a debate.
It's a conversation for another time. Okay, so yeah, that was our take on Elvis. Thank you all for listening. We enjoy doing these and hope to be able to continue to do them in the future. But until next time.
Oh, bye.
Bye-bye.